My traffic tickets were supposed to be an easy fine, a quick blip in my privileged life. Instead, Judge Caprio sentenced me to live with the very girl I almost killed. The air in the Providence Municipal Court was stale, smelling of cheap coffee, and the quiet desperation of people having a very bad day. My kind of place? Absolutely not. I checked the time on my Rolex, 10:15 a.m. I'd been stewing on this hard wooden bench for nearly an hour, and my patience, a commodity more precious than the platinum card in my wallet, was wearing dangerously thin. My offense? A series of what my father's lawyer called minor traffic indiscretions. I called it a Tuesday afternoon. Apparently, the city of Providence takes issue with a Porsche 911 Turbo S testing the limits of its engineering on a public thoroughfare. 95 in a 45 zone, an unsafe lane change, and running what was, at best, a very dark shade of yellow light. The cop who pulled me over was a real power tripper, scribbling down every little thing while I tried to explain that I was late for a crew team meeting. He didn't seem to care that my father, Jonathan Sterling, practically owned half the commercial real estate in this city. Some people are just unimpressible. My dad had been furious, not because I broke the law, but because I got caught. Discretion, Caden. It's all about discretion, he'd boomed over the phone before passing me off to his legal team. They assured me it was nothing. A fine, maybe some traffic school for appearances. I'd be in and out. The only snag was the judge, Frank Caprio. Apparently he was some local celebrity, a TV judge famous for being a soft touch. Just be polite, son, my lawyer had advised. Play the part of the remorseful kid. He'll probably let you off with a warning for the cameras. I scoffed, scrolling through Instagram. Remorseful? I was only remorseful that I had to waste my morning in this dump with these people. A woman in front of me was quietly crying over a $200 parking ticket. Get a grip, lady. That's not even a full tank of gas. I was surrounded by the mundane tragedies of the common folk, and it was profoundly boring. Finally, a bailiff called out, "Caden Sterling." I stood up, adjusting the collar of my custom-tailored shirt, and sauntered towards the front. The courtroom was smaller than it looked on YouTube, and there he was, Judge Caprio, looking exactly like he does on TV older, with kind eyes and that grandfatherly air. He peered at me over his glasses as I approached the podium. The cameras were rolling, just as I expected. Showtime. "Mr. Sterling, you have quite a list of citations here," he said, his voice calm and measured. He read them out loud, one by one. Exceeding the posted speed limit by 50 miles per hour, reckless driving, failure to stop at a red light. He looked up from the papers. "That's a busy intersection, son. You could have caused a very serious accident." I gave him the smile I reserved for disappointed deans and my mother's garden club friends. It was a well-practiced blend of charming and apologetic. "Your Honor, I know it looks bad on paper," I began, my tone smooth and practiced. "I was just having a bit of fun, got carried away. The car is, well, it's powerful. It's hard not to, you know." I leaned forward slightly, as if sharing a secret. "Boys will be boys, right?" A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Caprio's friendly expression didn't change, but his eyes seemed to get a little sharper. He wasn't smiling anymore. "Boys will be boys," he repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. "Is that what your father, Jonathan Sterling, taught you? That the rules are for other people?" My smirk faltered for a second. So he knew who my father was. Good. That would make this easier. "My father taught me to take responsibility," I said, laying the sarcasm on a little thick. "And I'm here, ready to pay the fine. Whatever it is. Let's just get this over with. I have places to be." The judge leaned back in his chair, folding his hands on his desk. The room was dead silent. I could feel every eye on me. He wasn't looking at the papers anymore. He was looking right through me. The kindly grandpa persona was gone. In its place was something hard, something ancient and unyielding, like granite. "Places to be," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow louder than a shout. "You think your time is more valuable than everyone else's in this room, Mr. Sterling? More valuable than the safety of the people in this city?" I felt a flash of irritation. Who was this old man to lecture me? "Look, with all due respect, Judge," I said, dropping the polite act entirely. "My father is a very influential man. A phone call could have made this all disappear. I'm here as a courtesy. So, if you could just tell me the fine—" I never finished the sentence. Judge Caprio held up a single hand, and I fell silent. He looked past me, towards the back of the courtroom. "Officer Russo," he said, his voice ringing with newfound authority. "Could you please escort the young woman in the third row to the front? I believe she has something to add." I turned, confused. My lawyer hadn't said anything about a witness. I scanned the benches and my blood ran cold. Standing up was a girl, maybe my age, her face pale and her hands trembling. She was being led forward by a uniformed officer. I had never seen her before in my life. Who the hell was she? I looked back at the judge, a knot of genuine dread tightening in my stomach for the first time. Judge Caprio stared at me, his expression grim. "Mr. Sterling, you say you were just having a little fun. This is Amelia. You almost made it the last bit of fun she ever had. Let's hear her side of the story, shall we?" The young woman, Amelia, walked hesitantly to a small table beside the prosecutor. She was dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, her hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked completely ordinary, which somehow made her testimony all the more terrifying. She clutched her hands together, her knuckles white. She wouldn't look at me, keeping her eyes fixed on the judge. "Please state your name for the record," Judge Caprio said, his voice now gentle, a stark contrast to the tone he'd used with me. "Amelia Rojas," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Ms. Rojas, can you tell the court what happened on the afternoon of October 12th at the corner of Thayer and Angel?" She took a shaky breath. "I was on my way to my job. I work at the university library. I had the walk signal. I checked both ways, and I stepped into the crosswalk." Her eyes flickered towards me for a single accusatory second before darting back to the judge. I heard it before I saw it. The engine, it sounded like a jet. I looked up, and this gray car was coming right at me. It wasn't slowing down. It was flying. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. My own breathing sounded loud in my ears. I wanted to shout that she was lying, that the light was yellow, that she was jaywalking, anything. But the judge's gaze was locked on her, and I knew interrupting would be a very bad idea. "What did you do?" the judge prompted. "I jumped back," she said, a tear rolling down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. "I fell back onto the curb. The car went past so fast, the wind from it. It pushed me. It was so close I could have touched it." She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and anger that sent a strange chill down my spine. "He went right through the red light. It wasn't even close to being yellow, and he didn't even look. He smirked at me as he went by. Like it was a game." The word "smirked" hit the room like a physical blow. The spectators murmured again, louder this time. I felt my lawyer shift uncomfortably beside me. I hadn't smirked. Had I? I couldn't remember. The whole thing was a blur of adrenaline and horsepower. "Thank you, Ms. Rojas. You may sit down," Judge Caprio said. He turned his attention back to me, and the last traces of warmth had vanished from his face. He looked like a statue carved from ice. "Mr. Sterling, you told me this was a case of boys will be boys. You told me you were just having a bit of fun. Does this sound like fun to you? Does endangering the life of this young woman sound like a game?" My carefully constructed composure was cracking. This was a public humiliation. He was making an example of me for his TV show. My anger boiled over. "This is ridiculous," I spat out, my voice louder than I intended. "She's fine, isn't she? Not a scratch on her. She's just being dramatic, probably hoping for a payday once she found out who my father is." A collective gasp swept through the room. My lawyer put his head in his hands. I knew I'd made a mistake, but I couldn't take it back. I had to double down. "I'm not apologizing for something that didn't happen. I'll pay the fine. Just name the price." Judge Caprio stared at me for a long, silent moment. I felt like an insect under a microscope. He wasn't angry anymore. He looked disappointed, profoundly and utterly disappointed. "A fine," he said softly. "You think money is the answer to everything, don't you? That it can patch any hole, absolve any sin. You believe your father's name is a shield. Let's put that to the test." He nodded to the bailiff. "Get me Jonathan Sterling on the phone. I want him on speaker." My blood turned to ice. My father. On the phone. Here? In front of all these people? This was a nightmare. This was a million times worse than any fine. My mind raced trying to find an escape, an objection my lawyer could make, but I was drawing a blank. The bailiff was already dialing. The tinny sound of the phone ringing filled the courtroom speakers, each ring echoing my doom. "Jonathan Sterling speaking." My father's clipped, impatient voice boomed through the room. "Mr. Sterling, this is Judge Frank Caprio. I have your son, Caden, standing before me in my courtroom." There was a pause. I could practically hear my father grinding his teeth. "Judge, a pleasure. I deeply apologize for any trouble my son has caused. Please inform me of the total fines, and I will have my assistant wire the funds immediately. We can put this unfortunate business behind us." The judge smiled, but it was a cold, sharp thing. It didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, there will be no fines today, Mr. Sterling. Your money is no good here. A fine is a punishment for you, not for him. Caden needs to learn a lesson about consequences, not about the power of his father's checkbook. What do you have in mind, Judge?" My father's voice was now cautious, wary. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. He was enjoying this, I could tell. He was savoring every second of my public crucifixion. "I am going to offer your son a choice," the judge announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the room and to my father on the phone. "A choice that will teach him about the world he seems to hold in such contempt. He can choose to spend the next 30 days at the adult correctional institution." He let that sink in. 30 days in actual jail. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Or," the judge continued, "he can accept an alternative. For the next 30 days he will be stripped of all his privileges. He will hand over his Rolex, his car keys, his wallet, and his phone to this court. And he will go to work." My father was silent on the other end. Work? What did he mean, work? "Where exactly would he be working, Judge?" my father asked. Judge Caprio gestured towards the young woman I had almost run down. Amelia Rojas looked just as stunned as I felt. "He'll be working at the university library," the judge declared, "dusting books, scrubbing floors, whatever they need, and he'll be doing it for free. But that's not all, Mr. Sterling. The library is on the other side of town from your mansion. Caden will need a place to stay." He paused for dramatic effect, a showman playing to his audience. "For the next 30 days, he will be living under the supervision of Ms. Rojas and her family." The courtroom erupted in a wave of shocked whispers. Living with her, with the girl I almost turned into a hood ornament. The idea was so preposterous, so utterly insane, that I almost laughed. This had to be a joke, a twisted, sadistic piece of community theater for his television audience. I looked over at Amelia Rojas. Her mouth was hanging open, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked as horrified by the suggestion as I felt. "Judge, that's not possible," she stammered, standing up. "We don't have room. My family. We can't just take in a stranger." "And I refuse," I blurted out, finding my voice. "Absolutely not. I'll take the 30 days in jail." The words were out before I could think. Jail. Me. With actual criminals. The bravado evaporated as soon as I said it, replaced by a cold wave of nausea. "Excellent," Judge Caprio said with a chilling smile. "Bailiff, please take Mr. Sterling into custody." The bailiff, a mountain of a man who looked like he ate Porsches for breakfast, started moving towards me. My lawyer grabbed my arm. "Caden, think about what you're saying," he hissed. "This is not a country club prison. You won't last a day." My father's voice, tight with controlled fury, crackled over the speaker. "Caden, shut your mouth. Judge, I apologize for my son's outburst. We will accept your alternative arrangement." I stared at the phone in disbelief. He was siding with the judge. My own father was throwing me to the wolves. "Dad, you can't be serious." "I am deadly serious," he retorted. "You made this mess, Caden. You will see it through. This is a lesson in humility you desperately need." The line went dead. He'd hung up. Just like that. I was abandoned. Judge Caprio looked at the terrified girl. "Ms. Rojas, the court understands your hesitation, but I believe Mr. Sterling's presence in your home will serve as a constant reminder of his actions. The state will provide your family with a weekly stipend for his food and lodging to ensure you are not financially burdened. Do you accept?" Amelia looked from the judge to me, her expression a mix of fear and something I couldn't quite place. Maybe resignation. She was trapped, just like me, a puppet in Caprio's morality play. After a long, agonizing silence, she gave a tiny, defeated nod. "Yes, Your Honor." "It's settled then," the judge declared, banging his gavel so loud it made me flinch. "Mr. Sterling, you will surrender your personal effects to the court clerk. Your sentence begins immediately. Officer Russo will escort you and Ms. Rojas from the courthouse." He looked directly at me, his eyes two chips of flint. "One more thing, son. If I receive a single complaint from the Rojas family about your behavior, if you are disrespectful, if you refuse to work, if you so much as raise your voice, this deal is off. And I will personally see to it that you serve not 30, but 60 days at the ACI. Do we understand each other?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my throat tight. The bailiff led me to the clerk's window, where I numbly unclasped my Rolex, the one my dad gave me for graduation. I dropped it on the counter with a heavy clink. Next came my wallet, thick with credit cards and cash. Then my keys, the Porsche fob feeling alien in my hand. Finally, my phone, my connection to my world. my entire social existence. As I placed it on the counter, I felt like a part of my soul was being ripped away. I was nobody. I had nothing. The walk out of the courthouse was a blur. Officer Russo walked behind us, a silent, imposing guard. Amelia walked a few feet ahead of me, as if my very proximity was toxic. We didn't speak. What was there to say? Outside, the bright Providence sun felt like an assault. The world was still turning, cars were driving by, people were living their lives, but my world had just stopped. "The bus stop is this way," Amelia said, her voice small and tight. The bus? I hadn't been on a public bus since a school field trip in the 7th grade. The indignity of it all was suffocating. We waited in silence at a covered stop that smelled faintly of urine. When the bus hissed to a stop in front of us, I followed her on, feeling the curious stares of the other passengers. I felt exposed, stripped bare without the armor of my expensive clothes and confident swagger. The ride was agonizingly long, taking us through neighborhoods I'd only ever seen from the insulated comfort of my car. These were streets of triple-decker houses with peeling paint, chain-link fences, and kids playing in cracked driveways. This was her world. We finally got off and walked down a modest street lined with identical houses packed close together. She stopped in front of one with a small, neat lawn and a welcoming front porch. It looked painfully normal. She unlocked the front door and pushed it open. "We're here." I stepped inside and was immediately hit by the smell of garlic and some kind of cleaning product. The house was small, tidy, and crowded with furniture that looked like it had been passed down through generations. Framed photos of a smiling family covered every available surface. From the back of the house, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair emerged, wiping her hands on an apron. "Amelia, who is this?" she asked in a warm voice laced with a slight accent. "Mama, this is Caden Sterling," Amelia said, the name tasting like poison in her mouth. "He's going to be staying with us for a while." Her mother's warm expression dissolved, replaced by a look of confusion and then dawning recognition. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at me, taking in my $1,000 shoes and designer jeans. She knew who I was, and she was not happy. Just then a side door opened and a man walked in, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a stained work shirt with the name Hector stitched over the pocket. He looked like he could bench press my Porsche. He took one look at me, then at his wife's face, then at his daughter's tear-streaked cheeks. His friendly demeanor vanished instantly. He took a slow, deliberate step towards me, his shadow falling over me like a storm cloud. He didn't say a word, but his eyes burned with a cold, protective fury. He looked at me like I was a cockroach he was about to crush under the heel of his steel-toed boot. "So," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "You're the rich boy who almost killed my little girl." My blood ran cold. Hector Rojas was an intimidating presence, his large frame filling the small entryway. I saw in his eyes the pure, primal anger of a father protecting his child, and for the first time, the reality of what I had done, what I had almost done, crashed down on me. This wasn't a traffic violation. I had threatened this man's entire world. "Hector, please," his wife Maria said, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "The judge—" Hector's jaw was tight, but he held his wife's gaze and gave a slow, reluctant nod. He never took his eyes off me. "There are rules in this house," he growled, his voice low and heavy. "You will respect my wife. You will respect my daughter. You will eat what is put in front of you, and you will clean up after yourself. You will do your work without complaint. You will be in this house by 9 every night. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. The word "sir" felt foreign on my tongue, but it was the only thing I could think to say. Maria pointed to a narrow staircase. "Your room is the small one at the end of the hall. It's my son's, but he's away at basic training." The room was tiny, barely bigger than my walk-in closet back home. A single bed was pushed against one wall, a small desk against the other. The walls were covered with posters of soldiers and army insignias. It was the room of a boy with dreams and discipline, everything I lacked. For the first night, I just lay on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a family living their life, just a thin wall away. I heard them speaking softly in Spanish, the clatter of dishes, the low murmur of a television. It was the loneliest I had ever felt. The next morning, the humiliation began in earnest. Amelia woke me at 6 a.m. We took the bus to the university, where I was introduced to the library's custodial supervisor, a stern woman named Mrs. Gable, who looked at me like I was a piece of gum she'd just scraped off her shoe. My first job was cleaning the men's bathrooms, all of them, on all 4 floors. The stench, the grime. It was a circle of hell Dante had forgotten to write about. My designer clothes were ruined within the first hour. By lunchtime, every muscle in my body ached. Amelia brought me a sandwich her mother had packed simple ham and cheese on white bread, but it tasted like the best meal I'd ever had. Days bled into a grueling routine. Wake up, bus, scrub toilets, mop floors, dust endless shelves of forgotten books, bus, dinner in near silence with the Rojas family, sleep. Hector watched my every move, his silence more intimidating than any shouting match. Maria remained polite but distant. Amelia simply ignored me. She would be there in the morning, a silent chaperone, and there in the evening, disappearing into her room as soon as we got home. About 2 weeks in, something shifted. I was reshelving books in the history section, a tedious task I'd been assigned after proving I could handle a toilet brush. I saw Amelia at a nearby table, stressing over a stack of textbooks, her head in her hands. On a whim, I walked over. "What's up?" I asked. She looked up, startled. "It's for my economics midterm. I just don't get this chapter on market theory." I glanced at the page. It was basic stuff, things my father had been drilling into me since I was 12. "It's just supply and demand curves," I said, pulling up a chair. "Look, you're overthinking it. The professor is just trying to—" And for the next hour I explained it to her, drawing graphs on a scrap of paper, using analogies my own tutor had used for me. When I was done, she looked at me with a new expression, one of genuine surprise. I get it now," she said. "Thank you." It was the first time she had spoken to me with anything other than clipped necessity. That night at dinner, the silence was a little less heavy. I asked Hector about his construction job. He grunted at first, but then started talking about the new medical center they were building downtown. I learned that Maria worked as a seamstress, and that their son, Marco, was the first in their family to join the military. I told them about my crew team, leaving out the part where my father had donated the boathouse. For the first time, we were having a conversation. The final week, I was assigned to clean the library's basement archives, a dusty, forgotten place. While moving some old boxes, I accidentally knocked over a crate filled with brittle, yellowed newspapers. As I was cleaning them up, a headline from a 1985 paper caught my eye. "Sterling Development bulldozes historic neighborhood for new high-rise." The article detailed how my father's company had bought out and demolished a block of old triple-decker homes in the exact area where the Rojas family now lived. An accompanying photo showed residents protesting, and in the background, a much younger Hector Rojas was being led away by police. My stomach dropped. I spent the rest of the afternoon digging through the archives. I found a dozen more articles. My father hadn't just built a tower. He had forcibly displaced an entire community, paying them pennies on the dollar for their homes, using legal loopholes and intimidation. The Rojas family, like dozens of others, had lost their original home to my family's ambition. That night, I couldn't eat. After dinner, I found Hector on the porch. I sat down on the steps, the old newspaper article clutched in my hand. I didn't say anything, just handed it to him. He looked at it, his face unreadable in the dim light. "I remember this day," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I was 20 years old. We lost everything. My father, he never recovered." "I didn't know," I said, and the words felt pathetic, hollow. "I am so sorry. For everything." Hector was silent for a long time, just looking out at the street. "Your father and we are from different worlds. He builds things by tearing others down. I build things with my hands. I thought you were just like him." He finally turned to look at me, and for the first time the anger in his eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked like pity. "Maybe you are not." My 30 days ended on a Friday. I stood before Judge Caprio once again. I was wearing a cheap pair of jeans and a t-shirt I'd bought with the small amount of money I'd earned from helping Hector with a side job on the weekend. The Rojas family stood in the back of the courtroom. "Well, Mr. Sterling," the judge said, peering at me, "you look different. How was your month?" "It was hard, Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady. And it was exactly what I deserved. I was arrogant, reckless, and disrespectful. I've learned that a car is not a toy, and that the world doesn't revolve around me. I've learned what an honest day's work feels like, and I've learned that my actions have consequences that can't be paid off with money. I looked back at the Rojas family. I'm grateful to them. They showed me kindness when I deserved none. Judge Caprio smiled. A genuine, warm smile this time. "Sentence served," he said, banging his gavel. My lawyer handed me my phone, wallet, and watch. They felt heavy and vulgar in my hand. As I walked out, I saw my father waiting by his limo. He looked relieved. "Well, Caden, I'm glad that's over. Let's go home." "In a minute," I said. I walked over to the Rojas family. I handed Amelia my Rolex. "I want you to have this," I said. "Sell it. Use it for your tuition. Please." She tried to refuse, but I closed her fingers around it. I shook Hector's hand, a real handshake this time, firm and equal. I thanked Maria for her kindness. Then I turned and walked back to my father. "I'm selling the Porsche," I told him as I got in the car. He looked stunned. "I'm going to use the money to set up a fund for the families your company displaced back in the 80s. It won't fix it, but it's a start." My father opened his mouth to argue, to tell me I was being foolish, but he stopped. He saw something different in my eyes, something that hadn't been there 30 days ago. He just nodded slowly. The ride home was silent, but it wasn't the angry silence of before. It was the quiet beginning of something new, something I was going to have to build with my own 2 hands, from the ground up.